China's historical civilization dates from at least 1200 BC. From the 3rd century BC and for the next 2 millennia, China alternated between periods of unity and disunity under a succession of imperial dynasties. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the country was beset by civil unrest, major famines, military defeats, and foreign occupation. After World War II, the Chinese Communist Party under Mao Zedong established an autocratic socialist system that, while ensuring China's sovereignty, imposed strict controls over everyday life and cost the lives of tens of millions of people. After 1978, Mao's successor Deng Xiaoping and other leaders focused on market-oriented economic development, and by 2000 output had quadrupled. For much of the population, living standards have improved dramatically, but political controls remain tight. Since the early 1990s, China has increased its global outreach and participation in international organizations.
China summary.
Adobe PDF.
Geography.
China.
Location. Eastern Asia, bordering the East China Sea, Korea Bay, Yellow Sea, and South China Sea, between North Korea and Vietnam.
Geographic coordinates. 3500 N. 10500 E.
Map references. Asia.
Area. Total.
9,596,960 square kilometers.
Land.
9,326,410 square kilometers.
Water.
270,550 square kilometers.
Country comparison to the world.
5.
Area. Comparative. Slightly smaller than the US.
Area comparison map.
Area comparison map.
Land boundaries. Total.
22,457 kilometers.
Border countries. 15.
Afghanistan 91 kilometers, Bhutan 477 kilometers, Burma 2,129 kilometers, India 2,659 kilometers, Kazakhstan 1,765 kilometers, North Korea 1,352 kilometers, Kyrgyzstan 1,063 kilometers, Laos 475 kilometers, Mongolia 4,630 kilometers, Nepal 1,389 kilometers, Pakistan 438 kilometers, Russia, northeast 4,133 kilometers, Russia, northwest 46 kilometers, Tajikistan 477 kilometers, Vietnam 1,297 kilometers.
Coastline 14,500 kilometers.
Maritime claims, territorial sea
12.
Exclusive economic zone
200.
Contiguous zone
24.
Continental shelf
200 more to the edge of the continental margin.
Climate extremely diverse, tropical in south to subarctic in north.
Terrain mostly mountains, high plateaus, deserts in west, plains, deltas, and hills in east.
Elevation, mean elevation
1,840 m.
Lowest point
Turpenpendi minus 154 m.
Highest point
Mount Everest, highest peak in Asia and highest point on Earth above sea level, 8,848 m.
Natural resources: coal, iron ore, petroleum, natural gas, mercury, tin, tungsten, antimony, manganese, molybdenum, vanadium, magnetite, aluminium, lead, zinc, rare earth elements, uranium, hydropower potential, world's largest, arable land.
Land use, agricultural land.
54.7%,
Arable land.
11.3%, permanent crops.
1.6%, /permanent pasture.
41.8%,
Forest.
22.3%,
Other.
23%,
Irrigated land. 690,070 square kilometers.
Population distribution. Overwhelming majority of the population is found in the eastern half of the country. The west, with its vast mountainous and desert areas, remains sparsely populated. Though ranked first in the world in total population, overall density is less than that of many other countries in Asia and Europe. High population density is found along the Yangtze and Yellow River valleys, the Zhejiang River Delta, the Sichuan Basin, around Chengdu, in and around Beijing, and the industrial area around Shenyang.
Natural hazards, frequent typhoons, about 5 per year along southern and eastern coasts, damaging floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, droughts, land subsidence.
Volcanism.
China contains some historically active volcanoes including Changbeichen, also known as Beitashan, Beigdu, or Piektu San, Hainandao, and Kunlun, although most have been relatively inactive in recent centuries.
Environment, current issues, air pollution, greenhouse gases, sulfur dioxide particulates. From reliance on coal produces acid rain. China is the world's largest single emitter of carbon dioxide from the burning of fossil fuels. Water shortages, particularly in the north, water pollution from untreated wastes, coastal destruction due to land reclamation, industrial development, and aquaculture, deforestation and habitat destruction. Poor land management leads to soil erosion, landslides, floods, droughts, dust storms, and desertification. Trade in endangered species.
Environment, international agreements. Party to
Antarctic Environmental Protocol, Antarctic Treaty, Biodiversity, Climate Change Kyoto Protocol, Desertification, Endangered Species, Environmental Modification, Hazardous Wastes, Law of the Sea, Marine Dumping, Ozone Layer Protection, Ship Pollution, Tropical Timber 83, Tropical Timber 94, Wetlands, Whaling.
Signed, but not ratified.
None of the selected agreements.
Geography. Note, world's fourth largest country, after Russia, Canada, and US, and largest country situated entirely in Asia. Mount Everest on the border with Nepal is the world's tallest peak above sea level.
People and society.
China.
Population 1,384,688,986.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Nationality. Noun.
Chinese, singular and plural.
Adjective.
Chinese.
Ethnic groups. Han Chinese 91.6%, Zhuang 1.3%. Other includes Hui, Manchu, Uyghur, Miao, Yi, Tujia, Tibetan, Mongol, Dong, Bae, Liao, Bai, Korean, Hani, Li, Kazakh, Dai, and other nationalities. 7.1%.
Note.
The Chinese government officially recognizes 56 ethnic groups.
Languages. Standard Chinese or Mandarin, official, Putonghua, based on the Beijing dialect, Cantonese, Wu, Shanghainese, Minbai, Fuzhou, Minnan, Hokkien Taiwanese, Xiang, Gan, Hakka dialects, minority languages. See ethnic groups entry.
Note.
Zhuang is official in Guingxi Zhuang, Wu is official in Guangdong, Mongolian is official in Mongol, Uyghur is official in Xinjiang Uyghur, Kyrgyz is official in Xinjiang Uyghur, and Tibetan is official in Xizang, Tibet.
Religions. Buddhist 18.2%, Christian 5.1%, Muslim 1.8%, folk religion 21.9%, Hindu less than 0.1%, Jewish less than 0.1%, other 0.7%, includes Taoist, unaffiliated 52.2%. Note, officially atheist, age structure 0 to 14 years, 17.22%, male 128,270,371, female 110,120,535.
15-24 years.
12.32%. Male 91,443,139. Female 79,181,726.
25-54 years.
47.84%. Male 338,189,015. Female 324,180,103.
55-64 years.
11.35%. Male 79,340,391. Female 77,857,806.
65 years and over.
11.27%. Male 74,277,631. Female 81,828,269.
Population pyramid.
Population pyramid.
Dependency ratios. Total dependency ratio.
37.7.
Youth dependency ratio.
24.3.
Elderly dependency ratio.
13.3.
Potential support ratio.
7.5.
Data do not include Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan.
Median age, total.
37.7 years.
Male.
36.8 years.
Female.
38.8 years.
Country comparison to the world.
64.
Population growth rate, 0.37%.
Country comparison to the world.
165.
Birth rate, 12.1 births out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
161.
Death rate, 8 deaths out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
89.
Net migration rate, minus 0.4 migrants out of 1,000 population.
Country comparison to the world.
119.
Population distribution. Overwhelming majority of the population is found in the eastern half of the country. The west, with its vast mountainous and desert areas, remains sparsely populated, though ranked first in the world in total population. Overall density is less than that of many other countries in Asia and Europe. High population density is found along the Yangtze and Yellow River valleys, the Zhejiang River Delta, the Sichuan Basin, around Chengdu, in and around Beijing, and the industrial area around Shenyang.
Urbanization, urban population.
59.2% of total population.
Rate of urbanization.
2.42% annual rate of change.
Note.
Data do not include Hong Kong and Macau.
Major urban areas, population. 25.582 million Shanghai, 19.618 million Beijing, capital, 14.838 million Chongqing, 12.683 million Guangdong, 13.215 million Tianjin, 11.908 million Shenzhen.
Sex ratio at birth.
1.14 male every 1 female.
0 to 14 years.
1.17 male every 1 female.
15 to 24 years.
1.14 male every 1 female.
25 to 54 years.
1.04 male every 1 female.
55 to 64 years.
1.02 male every 1 female.
65 years and over.
0.92 male every 1 female.
Total population.
1.06 male every 1 female.
Maternal mortality rate. 27 deaths/100,000 live births.
Country comparison to the world.
118.
Infant mortality rate. Total.
11.8 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Male.
12.2 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Female.
11.4 deaths out of 1,000 live births.
Country comparison to the world.
118.
Life expectancy at birth. Total population.
75.8 years.
Male.
73.7 years.
Female.
78.1 years.
Country comparison to the world.
100.
Total fertility rate. 1.6 children born. Woman.
Country comparison to the world.
181.
Health expenditures. 5.5% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
125.
Physicians density. 3.63 physicians out of 1,000 population.
Hospital bed density. 4.2 beds out of 1,000 population.
Drinking water source. Improved.
Urban.
97.5% of population.
Rural.
93% of population.
Total.
95.5% of population.
Unimproved.
Urban.
2.5% of population.
Rural.
7% of population.
Total.
4.5% of population.
Sanitation facility access. Improved.
Urban.
86.6% of population.
Rural.
63.7% of population.
Total.
76.5% of population.
Unimproved.
Urban.
13.4% of population.
Rural.
36.3% of population.
Total.
23.5% of population.
HIV/AIDS, Adult prevalence rate. Na.
HIV/AIDS. People living with HIV/AIDS. Na.
HIV/AIDS. Deaths. Na.
Major infectious diseases. Degree of risk.
Intermediate.
Food or waterborne diseases.
Bacterial diarrhea, hepatitis A, and typhoid fever.
Vector-borne diseases.
Japanese encephalitis.
Soil contact diseases.
Hantaviral hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. HFRS.
Obesity. Adult prevalence rate 6.2%.
Country comparison to the world.
169.
Children under the age of 5 years underweight. 2.4%.
Country comparison to the world.
107.
Education expenditures. NA.
Literacy. Definition.
Age 15 and over can read and write.
Total population.
96.4%.
Male.
98.2%.
Female.
94.5%.
School life expectancy. Primary to tertiary education. Total.
14 years.
Male.
14 years.
Female.
14 years.
People. Note. In October 2015, the Chinese government announced that it would change its rules to allow all couples to have 2 children, loosening a 1979 mandate that restricted many couples to 1 child. The new policy was implemented on the 1st of January 2016 to address China's rapidly aging population and economic needs.
Government.
China.
Country name. Conventional long form.
People's Republic of China.
Conventional short form.
China.
Local long form.
Zhonghui Renmin Gongo.
Local short form.
Zongo.
Abbreviation.
PRC.
Etymology.
English. A name derives from the Qin rulers of the 3rd century BC, who comprised the first imperial dynasty of ancient China. The Chinese name Zongo translates as Central Nation or Middle Kingdom.
Government type. Communist Party-led state.
Capital. Geographic coordinates.
3955 N. 11623 E.
Time difference.
UTC +8. 13 hours ahead of Washington, D.C., during Standard Time.
Capital.
Beijing.
Note.
Despite its size, all of China falls within one time zone.
Administrative divisions. 23 provinces, Sheng, singular and plural, 5 autonomous regions, Zizek, singular and plural, and 4 municipalities, Shay, singular and plural,
Provinces.
Anhui, Fujian, Gansu, Guangdong, Guizhou, Hainan, Hebei, Heilongjiang, Henan, Hubei, Hunan, Jiangsu, Jiangxi, Jilin, Liming, Qinghai, Shaanxi, Shandong, Shaanxi, Sichuan, Yunnan, Zhejiang. See note on Taiwan.
Autonomous regions.
Guangxi, Mongol, Inner Mongolia, Ningxia, Xinjiang Uyghur, Xizang, Tibet.
Municipalities.
Beijing, Chongqing, Shanghai, Tianjin.
Note.
China considers Taiwan its 23rd province. See separate entries for the special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau.
Independence. The 1st of October 1949. People's Republic of China established. Notable earlier dates.
221 BC Unification under the Qin dynasty. The 1st of January 1912. Qing dynasty replaced by the Republic of China.
National holiday. National Day. Anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. The 1st of October 1949.
Constitution. History.
Several previous, latest promulgated the 4th of December 1982.
Amendments.
Proposed by the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress or supported by more than 1/5 of the National People's Congress membership. Passage requires more than 2/3 majority vote of the Congress membership. Amended several times. Last in 2018.
Legal system. Civil law influenced by Soviet and continental European civil law systems. Legislature retains power to interpret statutes. Note. In early 2017, the National People's Congress took the first step in adopting a new civil code by passing the general provisions of the civil law.
International Law Organization participation has not submitted an ICJ jurisdiction declaration. Non-party state to the act.
Citizenship. Citizenship by birth.
No.
Citizenship by descent only.
Least one parent must be a citizen of China.
Dual citizenship recognized.
No.
Residency requirement for naturalization.
While naturalization is theoretically possible, in practical terms it is extremely difficult. Residency is required but not specified.
Suffrage. 18 years of age. Universal.
Executive branch. Chief of State.
President 11 Jinping. Since the 14th of March 2013. Vice President Wang Qishan. Since the 17th of March 2018.
Head of Government.
Premier Li Keqiang. Since the 16th of March 2013. Executive Vice Premiers Han Jing. Since the 19th of March 2018. Sun Chunlin. Since the 19th of March 2018. Liu He. Since the 19th of March 2018. Hu Chunhua. Since the 19th of March 2018.
Cabinet.
State Council appointed by National People's Congress.
Elections/appointments.
President and Vice President indirectly elected by National People's Congress for a 5-year term, unlimited terms. Election last held on the 17th of March 2018. Next to be held in March 2023. Premier nominated by President. Confirmed by National People's Congress.
Election results.
11 Jinping re-elected President, National People's Congress vote, 2,970, unanimously. Wang Qishan elected Vice President with 2,969 votes.
Legislative branch. Description.
Unicameral National People's Congress or Kino Renmin Daebiao Dui, maximum of 3,000 seats. Members indirectly elected by municipal, regional, and provincial people's congresses, and the People's Liberation Army. Members serve 5-year terms. Note, in practice, only members of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, its satellite independent parties, and CCP-approved independent candidates are elected.
Elections.
Last held in December 2017, February 2018. Next to be held in late 2022 to early 2023.
Election results.
Percent of vote, Na. Seats by party, Na. Composition, men 2,238, women 742, percent of women 24.9%.
Judicial branch. Highest courts.
Supreme People's Court, consists of over 340 judges, including the Chief Justice and 13 Grand Justices organized into a civil committee and tribunals for civil, economic, administrative, complaint and appeal, and communication and transportation cases.
Judge selection in term of office.
Chief Justice appointed by the People's National Congress, NPC, limited to 2 consecutive 5-year terms. Other justices and judges nominated by the Chief Justice and appointed by the Standing Committee of the NPC, term of other justices and judges determined by the NPC.
Subordinate courts.
Higher People's Courts, Intermediate People's Courts, District and County People's Courts, Autonomous Region People's Courts, International Commercial Courts, Special People's Courts for military, maritime, transportation, and forestry issues.
Note.
In late 2014, China unveiled a multi-year judicial reform program. Progress continued in 2018.
Political parties and leaders. Chinese Communist Party or CCP. 11 Jinping.
Note.
China has 8 nominally independent small parties controlled by the CCP.
International Organization Participation, ADB, FDB, non-regional member, APEC, Arctic Council, Observer, ARF, ASEAN, Dialogue Partner, BIS, BRICS, CDB, SICA, EASE, FAO, FATF, G20, G24, Observer, G5, G77, IADP, IAEA, IBRD, ICAO, ICC, National Committees, ICRM, IDA, IFAT, IFC, IFCS, IO, ILO, IMF, IMO, IMSO, Interpol, IOC, IAM, Observer, IPU, ISO, ITSO, ITU, LIA, Observer, MIGA, MINUSO, MINUSMA, MONUSCO, NAM, Observer, NSG, OAS, Observer, OPCW, Pacific Alliance, Observer, PCA, PIF, Partner, SARC, Observer, SCO, SICA, Observer, UN, UNAMID, UNCTAD, UNESCO, UNFICIP, UNIDO, UNIFIL, UNMIL, UNMIS, UNASI, UN Security Council, Permanent, UNTSO, UNTO, UPU, WCO, WHO, WIPO, WMO, WTO, ZC.
Diplomatic representation in the U.S. Chief of Mission.
Ambassador Kui Tankai, since the 3rd of April 2013.
Chancery.
3505 International Place Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20008.
Telephone.
12024952266.
Fax.
12024952138.
Consulate. S. General.
Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco.
Diplomatic representation from the U.S. Chief of Mission.
Ambassador Terry Branstad, since the 12th of July 2017.
Embassy.
55 and Honolulu, 100,600 Beijing.
Mailing address.
PSC 461, Box 50. FPO app 96521
Telephone.
861085313000.
Fax.
861085313300.
Consulate. S. General.
Chengdu, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Shenyang, Wuhan.
Flag description. Red with a large yellow 5-pointed star and 4 smaller yellow 5-pointed stars, arranged in a vertical arc toward the middle of the flag. In the upper hoist side corner, the color red represents revolution, while the stars symbolize the 4 social classes: the working class, the peasantry, the urban petty bourgeoisie, and the national bourgeoisie, capitalists, united under the Communist Party of China.
National symbols: dragon, giant panda. National colors:
red, yellow.
National anthem. Name:
Yiyongjinjinxinkwu, the March of the Volunteers.
Lyrics, music.
Qianhan/Nia.
Note:
Adopted 1949. The anthem, though banned during the Cultural Revolution, is more commonly known as Zhongguoguoj, Chinese national song. It was originally the theme song to the 1935 Chinese movie, Sons and Daughters in a Time of Storm.
Economy.
China.
Economy. Overview. Since the late 1970s, China has moved from a closed, centrally planned system to a more market-oriented one that plays a major global role. China has implemented reforms in a gradualist fashion, resulting in efficiency gains that have contributed to a more than tenfold increase in GDP since 1978. Reforms began with the phase-out of collectivized agriculture, and expanded to include the gradual liberalization of prices, fiscal decentralization, increased autonomy for state enterprises, growth of the private sector, development of stock markets and a modern banking system, and opening to foreign trade and investment. China continues to pursue an industrial policy, state support of key sectors, and a restrictive investment regime. From 2013 to 2017, China had one of the fastest growing economies in the world, averaging slightly more than 7% real growth per year. Measured on a purchasing power parity (PPP) basis that adjusts for price differences, China in 2017 stood as the largest economy in the world, surpassing the US in 2014 for the first time in modern history. China became the world's largest exporter in 2010, and the largest trading nation in 2013. Still, China's per capita income is below the world average.
In July 2005 moved to an exchange rate system that references a basket of currencies. From mid-2005 to late 2008, the renminbi, RMB, appreciated more than 20% against the US dollar, but the exchange rate remained virtually pegged to the dollar from the onset of the global financial crisis until June 2010, when Beijing announced it would resume a gradual appreciation. From 2013 until early 2015, the renminbi held steady against the dollar, but it depreciated 13% from mid-2015 until end 2016 amid strong capital outflows, In 2017, the RMB resumed appreciating against the dollar, roughly 7% from end of -2016 to end of -2017. In 2015, the People's Bank of China announced it would continue to carefully push for full convertibility of the renminbi, after the currency was accepted as part of the IMF's special drawing rights basket. However, since late 2015, the Chinese government has strengthened capital controls and oversight of overseas investments to better manage the exchange rate and maintain financial stability.
The Chinese government faces numerous economic challenges, including
reducing its high domestic savings rate and correspondingly low domestic household consumption, b. managing its high corporate debt burden to maintain financial stability, c. controlling off-balance sheet local government debt used to finance infrastructure stimulus, d. facilitating higher wage job opportunities for the aspiring middle class, including rural migrants and college graduates, while maintaining competitiveness, e. dampening speculative investment in the real estate sector without sharply slowing the economy, f. reducing industrial overcapacity, and g. raising productivity growth rates through the more efficient allocation of capital and state support for innovation. Economic development has progressed further in coastal provinces and in the interior, and by 2016 more than 169.3 million migrant workers and their dependents had relocated to urban areas to find work. One consequence of China's population control policy known as the one-child policy, which was relaxed in 2016 to permit all families to have 2 children, is that China is now one of the most rapidly aging countries in the world. Deterioration in the environment, notably air pollution, soil erosion, and the steady fall of the water table, especially in the north, is another long-term problem. China continues to lose arable land because of erosion and urbanization. The Chinese government is seeking to add energy production capacity from sources other than coal and oil, focusing on natural gas, nuclear, and clean energy development. In 2016, China ratified the Paris Agreement, a multilateral agreement to combat climate change, and committed to peak its carbon dioxide emissions between 2025 and 2030.
The government's 13th five-year plan, unveiled in March 2016, emphasizes the need to increase innovation and boost domestic consumption to make the economy less dependent on government investment, exports, and heavy industry. However, China has made more progress on subsidizing innovation than rebalancing the economy. Beijing has committed to giving the market a more decisive role in allocating resources, but the Chinese government's policies continue to favor state-owned enterprises and emphasize stability. Chinese leaders in 2010 pledged to double China's GDP by 2020, and the 13th five-year plan includes annual economic growth targets of at least 6.5% through 2020 to achieve that goal. In recent years, China has renewed its support for state-owned enterprises in sectors considered important to economic security, explicitly looking to foster globally competitive industries. Chinese leaders also have undermined some market-oriented reforms by reaffirming the dominant role of the state in the economy, a stance that threatens to discourage private initiative and make the economy less efficient over time. The slight acceleration in economic growth in 2017, the first such uptick since 2010, gives Beijing more latitude to pursue its economic reforms, focusing on financial sector deleveraging and its supply-side structural reform agenda, first announced in late 2015.
GDP, purchasing power parity, $23.21 trillion.
$21.72 trillion.
$20.35 trillion.
Note.
Data in 2017 dollars.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
GDP, official exchange rate, $12.01 trillion.
Note.
Because China's exchange rate is determined by fiat rather than by market forces, the official exchange rate measure of GDP is not an accurate measure of China's output. GDP at the official exchange rate substantially understates the actual level of China's output vis-à-vis the rest of the world. In China's situation, GDP at purchasing power parity provides the best measure for comparing output across countries.
GDP real growth rate 6.9%,
6.7%.
6.9%.
Country comparison to the world.
21.
GDP per capita. PPP $16,700.
$15,700.
$14,800.
Note.
Data are in 2017 dollars.
Country comparison to the world.
105.
Gross national saving 45.8% of GDP.
45.9% of GDP.
47.5% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
6.
GDP composition by end use. Household consumption
39.1%.
Government consumption
14.5%.
Investment in fixed capital
42.7%.
Investment in inventories
1.7%.
Exports of goods and services
20.4%.
Imports of goods and services
minus 18.4%.
GDP composition by sector of origin. Agriculture
7.9%.
Industry
40.5%.
Services
51.6%.
Agriculture products. World leader in gross value of agricultural output. Rice, wheat, potatoes, corn, tobacco, peanuts, tea, apples, cotton, pork, mutton, eggs, fish, shrimp.
Industries. World leader in gross value of industrial output. Mining and ore processing. Iron, steel, aluminum, and other metals. Coal, machine building, armaments, textiles and apparel, petroleum, cement, chemicals, fertilizer, consumer products, including footwear, toys, and electronics, food processing, transportation equipment, including automobiles, rail cars and locomotives, ships, aircraft, telecommunications equipment, commercial space launch vehicles, satellites.
Industrial production growth rate 6.1%.
Country comparison to the world.
40.
Labor force 806.7 million.
Note.
By the end of 2012, China's working age population, 15 to 64 years, was 1.04 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Labor force by occupation. Agriculture
27.7%.
Industry
28.8%.
Services
43.5%.
Unemployment rate 3.9%.
4%.
Note.
Data are for registered urban unemployment, which excludes private enterprises and migrants.
Country comparison to the world.
48.
Population below poverty line 3.3%.
Note.
In 2011, China set a new poverty line at RMB 2,300, approximately US $400.
Household income or consumption by percentage share. Lowest 10%.
2.1%.
Highest 10%.
31.4%.
Note.
Data are for urban households only.
Distribution of family income. Gini index 46.5.
46.2.
Country comparison to the world.
31.
Budget. Revenues
2.553 trillion.
Expenditures
3.008 trillion.
Taxes and other revenues 21.3% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
141.
Budget surplus, plus, or deficit, dash, minus 3.8% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
152.
Public debt 47% of GDP.
44.2% of GDP.
Note.
Official data. Data cover both central and local government debt, including debt officially recognized by China's National Audit Office report in 2011. Data exclude policy bank bonds, Ministry of Railway debt, and China Asset Management Company debt.
Country comparison to the world.
111.
Fiscal year. Calendar year.
Inflation rate. Consumer prices 1.6%.
2%.
Country comparison to the world.
88.
Central bank discount rate 2.25%.
2.25%.
Country comparison to the world.
117.
Commercial bank prime lending rate 4.35%.
4.35%.
Country comparison to the world.
160.
Stock of narrow money $8.351 trillion.
$7.001 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Stock of broad money $8.351 trillion.
$7.001 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Stock of domestic credit $27.34 trillion.
$23.02 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Market value of publicly traded shares $7.335 trillion.
$8.234 trillion.
$8.518 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
2.
Current account balance $164.9 billion.
$202.2 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
3.
Exports $2.216 trillion.
$1.99 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Exports partners US 19%, Hong Kong 12.4%, Japan 6%, South Korea 4.5%.
Exports, commodities, electrical and other machinery, including computers and telecommunications equipment, apparel, furniture, textiles.
Imports $1.74 trillion.
$1.501 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
2.
Imports commodities, electrical and other machinery, including integrated circuits and other computer components, oil and mineral fuels, optical and medical equipment, metals, motor vehicles, soybeans.
Imports, partners, South Korea 9.7%, Japan 9.1%, US 8.5%, Germany 5.3%, Australia 5.1%.
Reserves of foreign exchange in gold $3.236 trillion.
$3.098 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Debt external $1.598 trillion.
$1.429 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
14.
Stock of direct foreign investment at home $1.523 trillion.
$1.391 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
7.
Stock of direct foreign investment abroad $1.383 trillion.
$1.227 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
10.
Exchange rates renminbi yuan, RMB, per US dollar
7.76.
6.6446,
6.2275.
6.1434.
6.1958.
Energy.
China.
Electricity access. Population without electricity.
1.2 million.
Electrification. Total population.
99.9%.
Electrification. Urban areas.
100%.
Electrification. Rural areas.
99.8%.
Electricity production. 5.883 trillion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Electricity consumption 5.564 trillion kWh.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Electricity exports 18.91 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
10.
Electricity imports 6.185 billion kWh.
Country comparison to the world.
33.
Electricity installed generating capacity 1.653 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Electricity from fossil fuels 62% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
124.
Electricity from nuclear fuels 2% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
25.
Electricity from hydroelectric plants 18% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
93.
Electricity from other renewable sources 18% of total installed capacity.
Country comparison to the world.
47.
Crude oil production 3.838 million barrel day.
Country comparison to the world.
7.
Crude oil exports 57,310 barrels/day.
Country comparison to the world.
40.
Crude oil, imports 6.71 million barrel, day.
Country comparison to the world.
2.
Crude oil, proved reserves, 25.63 billion barrel.
Country comparison to the world.
12.
Refined petroleum products, production, 11.51 million barrel, day.
Country comparison to the world.
2.
Refined petroleum products, consumption, 12.47 million barrel/day.
Country comparison to the world.
2.
Refined petroleum products, exports, 848,400 barrel, day.
Country comparison to the world.
9.
Refined petroleum products, imports, 1.16 million barrel/day.
Country comparison to the world.
4.
Natural gas, production, 145.9 billion cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
6.
Natural gas, consumption, 238.6 billion qm.
Country comparison to the world.
3.
Natural gas, exports, 3.37 billion cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
35.
Natural gas, imports, 97.63 billion qm.
Country comparison to the world.
3.
Natural gas, proved reserves, 5.44 trillion cubic meters.
Country comparison to the world.
9.
Carbon dioxide emissions from consumption of energy, 11.67 billion.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Communications,
China,
telephones, fixed lines, total subscriptions,
193.762 million.
subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
14.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Telephones, mobile cellular, total subscriptions,
1,474,097,000.
subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
107.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Telephone system, general assessment.
China has become the largest internet market in the world, with the majority of users accessing the internet through mobile devices. Moderate growth is predicted over the next 5 years in the fixed broadband segment. One of the biggest drivers of commercial growth is its increasing urbanization rate as rural residents move to cities. 80% of China's internet users access the internet through mobile devices. By 2015, China will be the world's largest 5G market.
Domestic,
14 per 100 fixed line and 107 per 100 mobile cellular. A domestic satellite system with several Earth stations is in place in 2018.
international,
Country code -86. A number of submarine cables provide connectivity to Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and the US. Satellite Earth stations -7, 5 Intelsat -4 Pacific Ocean and 1 Indian Ocean, 1 in Sputnik Indian Ocean region, and 1 in Marsat Pacific and Indian Ocean regions.
broadcast media. All broadcast media are owned by, or affiliated with, the Communist Party of China or a government agency. No privately owned TV or radio stations. State-run Chinese Central TV, provincial, and municipal stations offer more than 2,000 channels. The Central Propaganda Department sends directives to all domestic media outlets to guide its reporting, with the government maintaining authority to approve all programming. Foreign-made TV programs must be approved prior to broadcast. Increasingly, Chinese turn to online and satellite television to access Chinese and international films and television shows.
Internet country code .com.
Internet users, total,
730,723,960.
percent of population.
53.2%.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Broadband, fixed subscriptions, total,
378.54 million.
subscriptions per 100 inhabitants.
27.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Transportation,
China.
National Air Transport System. Number of registered air carriers.
56.
Inventory of registered aircraft operated by air carriers.
2,890.
Annual passenger traffic on registered air carriers.
436,183,969.
Annual freight traffic on registered air carriers.
19.806 billion.
Civil aircraft registration country code prefix B.
Airports 507.
Country comparison to the world.
14.
Airports, with paved runways, total
463.
over 3,047 meters.
71.
2,438 to 3,047 meters.
158.
1,524 to 2,437 meters.
123.
914 to 1,523 meters.
25.
Under 914 meters.
86.
Airports, with unpaved runways, total
44.
over 3,047 meters.
4.
2,438 to 3,047 meters.
7.
1,524 to 2,437 meters.
6.
914 to 1,523 meters.
9.
Under 914 meters.
18.
Heliports, 47.
Pipelines 70,000 kilometers gas, 22,900 kilometers crude oil, 25,500 kilometers refined petroleum products, 710,206 kilometers water.
Railways, total
124,000 kilometers.
standard gauge.
124,000 kilometers 1.435 m gauge. 80,000 kilometers electrified. 102,000 traditional. 22,000 high-speed.
Country comparison to the world.
2.
Roadways, total
4,577,300 kilometers.
paved.
4,046,300 kilometers. Includes 123,500 kilometers of expressways.
Unpaved.
531,000 kilometers.
Country comparison to the world.
3.
Waterways, 110,000 kilometers. Navigable waterways.
Country comparison to the world.
1.
Merchant marine.
Merchant marine may be defined as all ships engaged in the carriage of goods, or all commercial vessels, as opposed to all non-military ships, which excludes tugs, fishing vessels, offshore oil rigs, etc.
Total.
4,287.
By type.
Bulk carrier 1,069. Container ship 198. General cargo 697. Oil tanker 480. Other 1843.
Country comparison to the world.
4.
Ports and terminals. Major seaport. S.
Dalian, Ningbo, Qingdao, Jinhuangdao, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Tianjin.
Container port. S. Cheese.
Dalian, 9,614,000. Guangzhou, 18,857,700. Ningbo, 21,560,000. Qingdao, 18,010,000. Shanghai, 37,133,000. Shenzhen, 23,979,300. Tianjin, 14,490,000.
LNG terminal. S. Import.
Fujian, Guangdong, Jiangsu, Shandong, Shanghai, Tangshan, Zhejiang.
River port. S.
Guangzhou, Pearl.
Transportation. Note: 7 of the world's 10 largest container ports are in China.
Military and security.
China.
Military expenditures 2% of GDP.
1.9% of GDP.
1.95% of GDP.
1.9% of GDP.
1.85% of GDP.
Country comparison to the world.
50.
Military branches. People's Liberation Army. PLA.
Army, Navy, Plan, includes Marines and Naval Aviation. Air Force, PLAF, includes Airborne Forces, Rocket Force, Strategic Missile Force, and Strategic Support Force, Space and Cyber Forces. People's Armed Police, PAP, PLA Reserve Force.
Military service age and obligation 18 to 22 years of age for selective compulsory military service, with a 2-year service obligation. No minimum age for voluntary service. All officers are volunteers. 18 to 19 years of age for women high school graduates who meet requirements for specific military jobs.
Transnational issues.
China.
Disputes. International, continuing talks and confidence-building measures work toward reducing tensions over Kashmir that nonetheless remains militarized with portions under the de facto administration of China, Aksai Chin, India, Jammu and Kashmir, and Pakistan, Azad Kashmir and northern areas. India does not recognize Pakistan's ceding historic Kashmir lands to China in 1964. China and India continue their security and foreign policy dialogue started in 2005 related to the dispute over most of their rugged, militarized boundary, regional nuclear proliferation, and other matters. China claims most of India's Arunachal Pradesh to the base of the Himalayas, lacking any treaty describing the boundary. Bhutan and China continue negotiations to establish a common boundary alignment to resolve territorial disputes arising from substantial cartographic discrepancies, the most contentious of which lie in Bhutan's west along China's Chumbi salient. Burmese forces attempting to dig into the largely autonomous Shan state to rout local militias tied to the drug trade, prompts local residents to periodically flee into neighboring Yunnan province in China. Chinese maps show an international boundary symbol off the coasts of the littoral states of the South China Seas, where China has interrupted Vietnamese hydrocarbon exploration. China asserts sovereignty over Scarborough Reef along with the Philippines and Taiwan, and over the Spratly Islands together with Malaysia, the Philippines, Taiwan, Vietnam, and Brunei. The 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea eased tensions in the Spratlys but is not the legally binding code of conduct sought by some parties. Vietnam and China continue to expand construction of facilities in the Spratlys, and in March 2005, the national oil companies of China, the Philippines, and Vietnam signed a joint accord on marine seismic activities in the Spratly Islands.
China occupies some of the Parachel Islands also claimed by Vietnam and Taiwan. The Japanese-administered Senkaku Islands are also claimed by China and Taiwan. Certain islands in the Yalu and Tumen rivers are in dispute with North Korea. North Korea and China seek to stem illegal migration to China by North Koreans, fleeing privations and oppression, by building a fence along portions of the border and imprisoning North Koreans deported by China. China and Russia have demarcated the once disputed islands at the Amur and Ussuri confluence and in the Argun River in accordance with their 2004 agreement. China and Tajikistan have begun demarcating the revised boundary agreed to in the delimitation of 2002. The decade-long demarcation of the China-Vietnam land boundary was completed in 2009. Citing environmental, cultural, and social concerns, China has reconsidered construction of 13 dams on the Salween River, but energy-starved Burma, with backing from Thailand, remains intent on building 5 hydroelectric dams downstream despite regional and international protests.
Chinese and Hong Kong authorities met in March 2008 to resolve ownership and use of lands recovered in Shenzhen River channelization, including 96-hectare Lak Ma Chau Loop.
Refugees and internally displaced persons. Refugees. Country of origin.
321,502. Vietnam. Undetermined. North Korea.
IBS.
Undetermined.
Trafficking in persons. Current situation.
China is a source, transit, and destination country for men, women, and children subjected to sex trafficking and forced labor. Chinese adults and children are forced into prostitution and various forms of forced labor, including begging and working in brick kilns, coal mines, and factories. Women and children are recruited from rural areas and taken to urban centers for sexual exploitation, often lured by criminal syndicates or gangs with fraudulent job offers. State-sponsored forced labor, where detainees work for up to 4 years often with no remuneration, continues to be a serious concern. Chinese men, women, and children also may be subjected to conditions of sex trafficking and forced labor worldwide. Particularly in overseas Chinese communities, women and children are trafficked to China from neighboring countries, as well as Africa and the Americas, for forced labor and prostitution.
Tier rating.
Tier 2 watch list. China does not fully comply with the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, however, it is making significant efforts to do so. Official data for 2014 states that 194 alleged traffickers were arrested and at least 35 were convicted, but the government's conflation of human trafficking with other crimes makes it difficult to assess law enforcement efforts to investigate and to prosecute trafficking offenses according to international law. Despite reports of complicity, no government officials were investigated, prosecuted, or convicted for their roles in trafficking offenses. Authorities did not adequately protect victims and did not provide the data needed to ascertain the number of victims identified or assisted or the services provided. The National People's Congress ratified a decision to abolish reform through labor in 2013. But some continued to operate as state-sponsored drug detention or custody and education centers that force inmates to perform manual labor. Some North Korean refugees continued to be forcibly repatriated as illegal economic migrants, despite reports that some were trafficking victims.
Illicit drugs. Major transshipment point for heroin produced in the Golden Triangle region of Southeast Asia. Growing domestic consumption of synthetic drugs and heroin from Southeast and Southwest Asia. Source country for methamphetamine and heroin chemical precursors. Despite new regulations on its large chemical industry, more people believed to be convicted and executed for drug offenses than anywhere else in the world, according to NGOs. China, officially the People's Republic of China, PRC, is a country in East Asia and the world's most populous country, with a population of around 1.404 billion. Covering approximately 9,600,000 square kilometers, 3,700,000 square miles, it is the third or fourth largest country by total area. Governed by the Communist Party of China, the state exercises jurisdiction over 22, de jure 23, provinces, 5 autonomous regions, 4 direct-controlled municipalities, Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai, and Chongqing, and the special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. China emerged as one of the world's earliest civilizations, in the fertile basin of the Yellow River in the North China Plain. For millennia, China's political system was based on hereditary monarchies, or dynasties, beginning with the semi-legendary Zhou dynasty in 21st century BCE. Since then, China has expanded, fractured, and reunified numerous times. In the 3rd century BCE, the Qin reunited core China and established the First Chinese Empire. The succeeding Han dynasty, which ruled from 206 BC until 220 AD, saw some of the most advanced technology at that time, including map-making and the compass, along with agricultural and medical improvements. The invention of gunpowder and movable type in the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907, and Northern Song, 960-1127, completed the 4 great inventions. Tang culture spread widely in Asia, as the new Silk Route brought traders to as far as Mesopotamia and Horn of Africa. Dynastic rule ended in 1912 with the Xinhai Revolution, when a republic replaced the Qing dynasty. The Chinese Civil War resulted in a division of territory in 1949, when the Communist Party of China established the People's Republic of China, a unitary one-party sovereign state on mainland China, while the Kuomintang-led government retreated to the island of Taiwan. The political status of Taiwan remains disputed. Since the introduction of economic reforms in 1978, China's economy has been one of the world's fastest-growing, with annual growth rates consistently above 6%. According to the World Bank, China's GDP grew from $150 billion in 1978 to $12.24 trillion by 2017. Since 2010, China has been the world's second-largest economy by nominal GDP and, since 2014, the largest economy in the world by purchasing power parity, PPP. China is also the world's largest exporter and second-largest importer of goods. China is a recognized nuclear weapons state and has the world's largest standing army and second-largest defense budget. The PRC is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council as it replaced the ROC in 1971, as well as an active global partner of ASEAN Plus mechanism. China is also a leading member of numerous formal and informal multilateral organizations, including the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, WTO, APEC, BRICS, the BCIM, and the G20. In recent times, China has been widely characterized as a global superpower. The word China has been used in English since the 16th century. It is not a word used by the Chinese themselves. It has been traced through Portuguese, Malay, and Persian back to the Sanskrit word China, used in ancient India. China appears in Richard Eden's 1555 translation of the 1516 Journal of the Portuguese explorer Duarte Barbosa. Barbosa's usage was derived from Persian Chin, which was in turn derived from Sanskrit China. China was first used in early Hindu scripture, including the Mahabharata, 5th century BC, and the Laws of Manu, 2nd century BC. In 1655, Martino Martini suggested that the word China is derived ultimately from the name of the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BC. Although this derivation is still given in various sources, it is complicated by the fact that the Sanskrit word appears in pre-Qin literature. The word may have originally referred to a state such as Yelang. Later, the meaning transferred to China as a whole. The origin of the Sanskrit word is still a matter of debate, according to the Oxford English Dictionary. The official name of the modern state is the People's Republic of China. The shorter form is China, Zhongguo, from Zhong, central, and Guo, state, a term which developed under the Western Zhou dynasty in reference to its royal demesne. It was then applied to the area around Luoyi, present-day Luoyang, during the Eastern Zhou and then to China's central plain before being used as an occasional synonym for the state under the Qing. It was often used as a cultural concept to distinguish the Huaxia people from perceived barbarians. The name Zhongguo is also translated as Middle Kingdom in English. History, prehistory, 10,000 years old pottery, genre and cave culture, 18,000 to 7,000. Archaeological evidence suggests that early hominids inhabited China between 2.24 million and 250,000 years ago. The hominid fossils of Peking Man, a Homo erectus who used fire, were discovered in a cave at Zhukudian near Beijing. They have been dated to between 680,000 and 780,000 years ago. The fossilized teeth of Homo sapiens, dated to 125,000 to 80,000 years ago, have been discovered in Fuan Cave in Dao County, Hunan. Chinese proto-writing existed in Jiahu around 7,000, Damidi around 6,000, Dada 1 from 5,800 to 5,400, and Banpo dating from the 5th millennium. Some scholars have suggested that the Jiahu symbols, 7th millennium, constituted the earliest Chinese writing system. Early dynastic rule. According to Chinese tradition, the first dynasty was the Zhe, which emerged around 2100. The dynasty was considered mythical by historians until scientific excavations found early Bronze Age sites at Ilatu, Henan in 1959. It remains unclear whether these sites are the remains of the Zhe dynasty or of another culture from the same period. The succeeding Shang dynasty is the earliest to be confirmed by contemporary records. The Shang ruled the plain of the Yellow River in eastern China from the 17th to the 11th centuries. Their oracle bone script, from c.?1500, represents the oldest form of Chinese writing yet found, and is a direct ancestor of modern Chinese characters. The Shang was conquered by the Zhou, who ruled between the 11th and 5th centuries, though centralized authority was slowly eroded by feudal warlords. Some principalities eventually emerged from the weakened Zhou, no longer fully obeyed the Zhou king and continually waged war with each other in the 300-year spring and autumn period. By the time of the Warring States period of the 5th to the 3rd centuries, there were only 7 powerful states left. Imperial China, China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, is famed for having united the Warring States walls to form the Great Wall of China. Most of the present structure, however, dates to the Ming dynasty. The Warring States period ended in 221 after the state of Qin conquered the other 6 kingdoms, reunited China and established the dominant order of totalitarian autocracy. King Xing of Qin proclaimed himself the first emperor of the Qin dynasty. He enacted Qin's legalist reforms throughout China, notably the forced standardization of Chinese characters, measurements, road widths, i.e., cart axles length, and currency. His dynasty also conquered the Yu tribes in Guangxi, Guangdong, and Vietnam. The Qin dynasty lasted only 15 years, falling soon after the first emperor's death, as his harsh authoritarian policies led to widespread rebellion. Following a widespread civil war during which the imperial library at Zhanyang was burned, the Han dynasty emerged to rule China between 206 and c. 220, creating a cultural identity among its populace still remembered in the ethnonym of the Han Chinese. The Han expanded the empire's territory considerably, with military campaigns reaching Central Asia, Mongolia, South Korea, and Yunnan, and the recovery of Guangdong in northern Vietnam from Nanayu. Han involvement in Central Asia and Sogdia helped establish the land route of the Silk Road, replacing the earlier path over the Himalayas to India. Han China gradually became the largest economy of the ancient world. Despite the Han's initial decentralization and the official abandonment of the Qin philosophy of legalism in favor of Confucianism, Qin's legalist institutions and policies continued to be employed by the Han government and its successors. After the end of the Han dynasty, a period of strife known as Three Kingdoms followed, whose central figures were later immortalized in one of the four classics of Chinese literature. At its end, Wei was swiftly overthrown by the Jin dynasty. The Jin fell to civil war upon the ascension of a developmentally disabled emperor. The five barbarians then invaded and ruled northern China as the 16 states. The Zhanbei unified them as the Northern Wei, whose emperor Xiaoan reversed his predecessor's apartheid policies and then forced a drastic sinification on his subjects, largely integrating them into Chinese culture. In the south, the general Liu secured the abdication of the Jin in favor of the Liu Song. The various successors of these states became known as the Northern and Southern dynasties, with the two areas finally reunited by the Sui in 581. The Sui restored the Han to power through China, reformed its agriculture and economy, constructed the Grand Canal, and patronized Buddhism. However, they fell quickly when their conscription for public works and a failed war in northern Korea provoked widespread unrest. Under the succeeding Tang and Song dynasties, Chinese economy, technology, and culture entered a golden age. The Tang Empire returned control of the western regions and the Silk Road, and made the capital Chang'an a cosmopolitan urban center. However, it was devastated and weakened by the Anshu rebellion in the 8th century. In 907, the Tang disintegrated completely when the local military governors became ungovernable. The Song dynasty ended the separatist situation in 960, leading to a balance of power between the Song and Khitan Liao. The Song was the first government in world history to issue paper money and the first Chinese polity to establish a permanent standing navy, which was supported by the developed shipbuilding industry along with the sea trade. Between the 10th and 11th centuries, the population of China doubled in size to around 100 million people, mostly because of the expansion of rice cultivation in central and southern China, and the production of abundant food surpluses. The Song dynasty also saw a revival of Confucianism, in response to the growth of Buddhism during the Tang, and a flourishing of philosophy and the arts, as landscape art and porcelain were brought to new levels of maturity and complexity. However, the military weakness of the Song army was observed by the Jurchen dynasty. In 1127, Emperor Huaizong of Song and the capital Bianjing were captured during the Jin-Song Wars. The remnants of the Song retreated to southern China. The 13th century brought the Mongol conquest of China. In 1271, the Mongol leader Kublai Khan established the Yuan dynasty. The Yuan conquered the last remnant of the Song dynasty in 1279. Before the Mongol invasion, the population of Song China was 120 million citizens. This was reduced to 60 million by the time of the census in 1300. A peasant named Zhu Yuan's hangover through the Yuan in 1368 and founded the Ming dynasty as the Hongwu Emperor. Under the Ming dynasty, China enjoyed another golden age, developing one of the strongest navies in the world and a rich and prosperous economy amid a flourishing of art and culture. It was during this period that Admiral Zheng He led the Ming treasure voyages throughout the Indian Ocean, reaching as far as East Africa. In the early years of the Ming Dynasty, China's capital was moved from Nanjing to Beijing. With the budding of capitalism, philosophers such as Wang Yangming further critiqued and expanded Neo-Confucianism with concepts of individualism and equality of four occupations. The scholar-official stratum became a supporting force of industry and commerce in the tax boycott movements, which, together with the famines and defense against Japanese invasions of Korea, 1592–98, and Manchu invasions led to an exhausted treasury. In 1644, Beijing was captured by a coalition of peasant rebel forces led by Li Zikeng. The Chongzhen emperor committed suicide when the city fell. The Manchu Qing dynasty, then allied with Ming dynasty general Wu Sangui, overthrew Li's short-lived Shun dynasty and subsequently seized control of Beijing, which became the new capital of the Qing dynasty. End of dynastic rule. The Qing dynasty, which lasted from 1644 until 1912, was the last imperial dynasty of China. Its conquest of the Ming, 1618–1683, cost 25 million lives and the economy of China shrank drastically. After the southern Ming ended, the further conquest of the Zheng Khanate added Mongolia, Tibetans and Yang to the empire. The centralized autocracy was strengthened to crack down on anti-Qing sentiment with the policy of valuing agriculture and restraining commerce, the Heijin, Ziban, and ideological control as represented by the Literary Inquisition, causing social and technological stagnation. In the mid-19th century, the dynasty experienced Western imperialism in the Opium Wars with Britain and France. China was forced to pay compensation, open treaty ports, allow extraterritoriality for foreign nationals, and cede Hong Kong to the British under the 1842 Treaty of Nanking, the first of the unequal treaties. The First Sino-Japanese War, 1894–95, resulted in Qing China's loss of influence in the Korean peninsula, as well as the cession of Taiwan to Japan. The Eight-Nation Alliance invaded China to defeat the anti-foreign Boxers and their Qing backers. The Qing dynasty also began experiencing internal unrest in which tens of millions of people died, especially in the White Lotus Rebellion, the failed Taiping Rebellion that ravaged southern China in the 1850s and 1860s, and the Dungan Revolt, 1862–77, in the northwest. The initial success of the self-strengthening movement of the 1860s was frustrated by a series of military defeats in the 1880s and 1890s. In the 19th century, the Great Chinese Diaspora began. Losses due to emigration were added to by conflicts and catastrophes such as the Northern Chinese Famine of 1876–79, in which between 9 and 13 million people died. The Guangxu Emperor drafted a reform plan in 1898 to establish a modern constitutional monarchy, but these plans were thwarted by the Empress Dowager Cixi. The ill-fated anti-foreign Boxer Rebellion of 1899–1901 further weakened the dynasty. Although Cixi sponsored a program of reforms, the Xinhai Revolution of 1911–12 brought an end to the Qing dynasty and established the Republic of China. Republic of China, 1912–1949. On the 1st of January 1912, the Republic of China was established, and Sun Yat-sen of the Kuomintang, the KMT or Nationalist Party, was proclaimed provisional president. However, the presidency was later given to Yuan Shikai, a former Qing general who in 1915 proclaimed himself Emperor of China. In the face of popular condemnation and opposition from his own Beiyang army, he was forced to abdicate and re-establish the republic. After Yuan Shikai's death in 1916, China was politically fragmented. Its Beijing-based government was internationally recognized but virtually powerless. Regional warlords controlled most of its territory. In the late 1920s, the Kuomintang, under Chiang Kai-shek, the then principal of the Republic of China Military Academy, was able to reunify the country under its own control with a series of deft military and political maneuverings, known collectively as the Northern Expedition. The Kuomintang moved the nation's capital to Nanjing and implemented political tutelage, an intermediate stage of political development outlined in Sun Yat-sen's Sandmin program for transforming China into a modern democratic state. The political division in China made it difficult for Chiang to battle the Communist People's Liberation Army, PLA, against whom the Kuomintang had been warring since 1927 in the Chinese Civil War. This war continued successfully for the Kuomintang, especially after the PLA retreated in the Long March, until Japanese aggression and the 1936 Xi'an incident forced Chiang to confront Imperial Japan. Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong toasting together in 1946 following the end of World War II. The Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937 to 1945, a theatre of World War II, forced an uneasy alliance between the Kuomintang and the PLA. Japanese forces committed numerous war atrocities against the civilian population. In all, as many as 20 million Chinese civilians died. An estimated 200,000 Chinese were massacred in the city of Nanjing alone during the Japanese occupation. During the war, China, along with the UK, the US, and the Soviet Union, were referred to as trusteeship of the powerful and were recognized as the Allied Big Four in the declaration by United Nations. Along with the other three great powers, China was one of the four major allies of World War II, and was later considered one of the primary victors in the war. After the surrender of Japan in 1945, Taiwan, including the Pescadores, was returned to Chinese control. China emerged victorious but war-ravaged and financially drained. The continued distrust between the Kuomintang and the Communists led to the resumption of civil war. Constitutional rule was established in 1947, but because of the ongoing unrest, many provisions of the ROC Constitution were never implemented in mainland China. People's Republic of China, 1949-present. Major combat in the Chinese Civil War ended in 1949 with the Communist Party in control of most of mainland China, and the Kuomintang retreating offshore, reducing the ROC's territory to only Taiwan, Hainan, and their surrounding islands. On the 21st of September 1949, Communist Party Chairman Mao Zedong proclaimed the establishment of the People's Republic of China. This was followed by a mass celebration in Tiananmen Square on the 1st of October, which became the new country's first national day. In 1950, the People's Liberation Army succeeded in capturing Hainan from the ROC and incorporating Tibet. However, remaining Kuomintang forces continued to wage an insurgency in western China throughout the 1950s. In modern U.S. history studies, the founding of PRC China is often termed as the loss of China, as reflected in U.S. state policy documents of the time, which thinkers such as Noam Chomsky call the beginning of McCarthyism. The regime consolidated its popularity among the peasants through land reform, which included the execution of between 1 and 2 million landlords. China developed an independent industrial system and its own nuclear weapons. The Chinese population increased from 550 million in 1950 to 900 million in 1974. However, the Great Leap Forward, a large-scale economic and social reform project, resulted in an estimated 45 million deaths between 1958 and 1961, mostly from starvation. In 1966, Mao and his allies launched the Cultural Revolution, sparking a decade of political recrimination and social upheaval which lasted until Mao's death in 1976. In October 1971, the PRC replaced the Republic of China in the United Nations, and took its seat as a permanent member of the Security Council. After Mao's death, the Gang of Four was quickly arrested and held responsible for the excesses of the Cultural Revolution. Deng Xiaoping took power in 1978, and instituted significant economic reforms. The Communist Party loosened governmental control over citizens' personal lives, and the communes were gradually disbanded in favor of working contracted to households. This marked China's transition from a planned economy to a mixed economy with an increasingly open market environment. China adopted its current constitution on the 4th of December 1982. In 1989, the violent suppression of student protests in Tiananmen Square brought sanctions against the Chinese government from various countries. Jiang Zemin, Li Peng and Zhe Rongji led the nation in the 1990s. Under their administration, China's economic performance pulled an estimated 150 million peasants out of poverty and sustained an average annual gross domestic product growth rate of 11.2%. The country formally joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. And maintained its high rate of economic growth under Hu Jintao and Wen Weibao's leadership in the 2000s. However, rapid growth also severely impacted the country's resources and environment, and caused major social displacement. Living standards continued to improve rapidly despite the late 2000s recession, but centralized political control remained tight. Preparations for a decadal Communist Party leadership change in 2012 were marked by factional disputes and political scandals. During China's 18th National Communist Party Congress in November 2012, Hu Jintao was replaced as General Secretary of the Communist Party by Xi Jinping. Under Xi, the Chinese government began large-scale efforts to reform its economy, which has suffered from structural instabilities and slowing growth. The Xi administration also announced major reforms to the one-child policy and prison system. Geography: China's landscape is vast and diverse, ranging from the Gobi and Taklamakan deserts in the arid north to subtropical forests in the wetter south. The Himalaya, Karakoram, Pamir and Tian Shan mountain ranges separate China from much of South and Central Asia. The Yangtze and Yellow Rivers, the third and sixth longest in the world, respectively, run from the Tibetan Plateau to the densely populated eastern seaboard. China's coastline along the Pacific Ocean is 14,500 kilometers, 9,000 miles, long and is bounded by the Bohai, Yellow, East China and South China Seas. China connects through the Kazakh border to the Eurasian steppe, which has been an artery of communication between East and West since the Neolithic through the steppe route, the ancestor of the terrestrial Silk Road. Landscape and climate: the territory of China lies between latitudes 18 degrees and 54 degrees N, and longitudes 73 degrees and 135 degrees E. China's landscapes vary significantly across its vast width. In the east, along the shores of the Yellow Sea and the East China Sea, there are extensive and densely populated alluvial plains, while on the edges of the Inner Mongolian Plateau in the north, broad grasslands predominate. Southern China is dominated by hills and low mountain ranges, while the Central East hosts the deltas of China's two major rivers, the Yellow River and the Yangtze River. Other major rivers include the Xi, Mekong, Brahmaputra and Amur. To the west sit major mountain ranges, most notably the Himalayas. High plateaus feature among the more arid landscapes of the north, such as the Taklamakan and the Gobi Desert. The world's highest point, Mount Everest, 8,848 m, lies on the Sino-Nepalese border. The country's lowest point, and the world's third lowest, is the dried lake bed of Ading Lake, -154 m, in the Turpan Depression. China's climate is mainly dominated by dry seasons and wet monsoons, which lead to pronounced temperature differences between winter and summer. In the winter, northern winds coming from high-latitude areas are cold and dry. In summer, southern winds from coastal areas at lower latitudes are warm and moist. The climate in China differs from region to region because of the country's highly complex topography. A major environmental issue in China is the continued expansion of its deserts, particularly the Gobi Desert. Although barrier tree lines planted since the 1970s have reduced the frequency of sandstorms, prolonged drought and poor agricultural practices have resulted in dust storms plaguing northern China each spring, which then spread to other parts of East Asia, including Korea and Japan. China's environmental watchdog, SCPA, stated in 2007 that China is losing 4,000 km to 1,500 square miles per year to desertification. Water quality, erosion, and pollution control have become important issues in China's relations with other countries. Melting glaciers in the Himalayas could potentially lead to water shortages for hundreds of millions of people. Biodiversity: a giant panda, China's most famous endangered and endemic species, at the Chengdu Research Base of giant panda breeding in Sichuan, China is one of 17 megadiverse countries, lying in two of the world's major ecozones, the Palearctic and the Indomalaya. By one measure, China has over 34,687 species of animals and vascular plants, making it the third most biodiverse country in the world, after Brazil and Colombia. The country signed the Rio de Janeiro Convention on Biological Diversity on the 11th of June 1992, and became a party to the convention on the 5th of January 1993. It later produced a national biodiversity strategy and action plan, with one revision that was received by the convention on the 21st of September 2010. China is home to at least 551 species of mammals, the third highest such number in the world, 1,221 species of birds, 8th, 424 species of reptiles, 7th, and 333 species of amphibians, 7th. Wildlife in China share habitat with and bear acute pressure from the world's largest population of Homo sapiens. At least 840 animal species are threatened, vulnerable or in danger of local extinction in China, due mainly to human activities such as habitat destruction, pollution and poaching for food, fur and ingredients for traditional Chinese medicine. Endangered wildlife is protected by law, and as of 2005, the country has over 2,349 nature reserves, covering a total area of 149.95 million hectares, 15% of China's total land area. The beiji has recently been confirmed extinct. China has over 32,000 species of vascular plants, and is home to a variety of forest types. Cold coniferous forests predominate in the north of the country, supporting animal species such as moose and Asian black bear, along with over 120 bird species. The understory of moist conifer forests may contain thickets of bamboo. In higher montane stands of juniper and yew, the bamboo is replaced by rhododendrons. Subtropical forests, which are predominant in central and southern China, support as many as 146,000 species of flora. Tropical and seasonal rainforests, though confined to Yunnan and Hainan Island, contain a quarter of all the animal and plant species found in China. China has over 10,000 recorded species of fungi, and of them, nearly 6,000 are hyofungi. Environmental issues. Wind turbines in Xinjiang. In recent decades, China has suffered from severe environmental deterioration and pollution. While regulations such as the 1979 Environmental Protection Law are fairly stringent, they are poorly enforced, as they are frequently disregarded by local communities and government officials in favor of rapid economic development. Urban air pollution is a severe health issue in the country. The World Bank estimated in 2013 that 16 of the world's 20 most polluted cities are located in China. And China is the country with the highest death toll because of air pollution. There are 1.14 million deaths caused by exposure to ambient air pollution. China is the world's largest carbon dioxide emitter. The country also has significant water pollution problems. 40% of China's rivers had been polluted by industrial and agricultural waste by late 2011. In 2014, the internal freshwater resources per capita of China reduced 2,060 to M3, and it was below 500 M3 in the North China Plain, while 5,920 M3 in the world. In China, heavy metals also cause environmental pollution. Heavy metal pollution is an inorganic chemical hazard, which is mainly caused by lead, chromium, arsenic, as cadmium, mercury, zinc, copper, cobalt, and nickel, Ni. 5 metals among them, as and are the key heavy metal pollutants in China. Heavy metal pollutants mainly come from mining, sewage irrigation, the manufacturing of metal-containing products, and other related production activities. High level of heavy metal exposure can also cause permanent intellectual and developmental disabilities, including reading and learning disabilities, behavioral problems, hearing loss, attention problems, and disruption in the development of visual and motor function. According to the data of the National Census of Pollution, China has more than 1.5 million sites of heavy metals exposure. The total volume of discharged heavy metals in the wastewater, waste gas and solid wastes are around 900,000 tons each year from 2005 to 2011. However, China is the world's leading investor in renewable energy and its commercialization, with $52 billion invested in 2011 alone. It is a major manufacturer of renewable energy technologies and invests heavily in local-scale renewable energy projects. By 2015, over 24% of China's energy was derived from renewable sources, while most notably from hydroelectric power. A total installed capacity of 197 gigawatts makes China the largest hydroelectric power producer in the world. China also has the largest power capacity of installed solar photovoltaic system and wind power system in the world. In 2011, the Chinese government announced plans to invest 4 trillion yuan, as $619 billion, in water infrastructure and desalination projects over a 10-year period, and to complete construction of a flood prevention and anti-drought system by 2020. In 2013, China began a 5-year, $277 billion effort to reduce air pollution, particularly in the north of the country. Political geography. The People's Republic of China is the second largest country in the world by land area after Russia, and is either the third or fourth largest by total area, after Russia, Canada and, depending on the definition of total area, the United States. China's total area is generally stated as being approximately 9,600,000 km to 3,700,000 square miles. Specific area figures range from 9,572,900 km to 3,696,100 square miles, according to the Encyclopaedia Britannica, to 9,596,961 km to 3,705,407 square miles, according to the UN Demographic Yearbook and the CIA World Factbook. China has the longest combined land border in the world, measuring 22,117 kilometers, 13,743 miles, from the mouth of the Yalu River to the Gulf of Tonkin. China borders 14 nations, more than any other country except Russia, which also borders 14. China extends across much of East Asia, bordering Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar, Burma, in Southeast Asia, India, Bhutan, Nepal, Afghanistan, and Pakistan in South Asia, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan in Central Asia, and Russia, Mongolia, and North Korea in Inner Asia and Northeast Asia. Additionally, China shares maritime boundaries with South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Politics. China's constitution states that the People's Republic of China is a socialist state under the People's Democratic Dictatorship led by the working class and based on the alliance of workers and peasants, and that the state organs apply the principle of democratic centralism. The PRC is one of the world's only socialist states openly endorsing communism. See ideology of the Communist Party of China. The Chinese government has been variously described as communist and socialist, but also as authoritarian and corporatist, with heavy restrictions in many areas, most notably against free access to the internet, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, the right to have children, free formation of social organizations and freedom of religion. Its current political, ideological and economic system has been termed by its leaders as the People's Democratic Dictatorship, socialism with Chinese characteristics, which is Marxism adapted to Chinese circumstances, and the socialist market economy, respectively. Communist Party. China's constitution declares that the country is ruled under the leadership of the Communist Party of China, CPC. As China is a de facto one-party state, the General Secretary, party leader, holds ultimate power and authority over state-owned government, serving as the paramount leader. The electoral system is pyramidal. Local People's Congresses are directly elected, and higher levels of People's Congresses up to the National People's Congress, NPC, are indirectly elected by the People's Congress of the level immediately below. The political system is decentralized, and provincial and sub-provincial leaders have a significant amount of autonomy. Another 8 political parties have representatives in the NPC and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. China supports the Leninist principle of democratic centralism, but critics describe the elected National People's Congress as a rubber stamp body. Government. The president is the titular head of state, elected by the National People's Congress. The premier is the head of government, presiding over the state council composed of 4 vice premiers and the heads of ministries and commissions. The incumbent president is Xi Jinping, who is also the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China and the chairman of the Central Military Commission, making him China's paramount leader. The incumbent premier is Li Keqiang, who is also a senior member of the CPC Politburo Standing Committee, China's de facto top decision-making body. There have been some moves toward political liberalization, in that open contested elections are now held at the village and town levels. However, the party retains effective control over government appointments. In the absence of meaningful opposition, the CPC wins by default most of the time. Political concerns in China include the growing gap between rich and poor in government, corruption. Nonetheless, The level of public support for the government and its management of the nation is high, with 80 to 95% of Chinese citizens expressing satisfaction with the central government, according to a 2011 survey. Administrative divisions. The People's Republic of China is divided into 22 provinces, 5 autonomous regions, each with a designated minority group, 4 municipalities, and 2 special administrative regions, SARs, which enjoy a degree of political autonomy. These 31 provincial-level divisions can be collectively referred to as mainland China, a term which usually excludes 2 SARs of Hong Kong and Macau. Geographically, all 31 provincial divisions can be grouped into 6 regions, including North China, Northeast China, East China, South Central China, Southwest China and Northwest China. China considers Taiwan to be its 23rd province, although Taiwan is governed by the Republic of China, which rejects the PRC's claim. None of the divisions are recognized by the ROC government, which claims the entirety of the PRC's territory. Foreign relations. Chinese President Xi Jinping and G20 leaders from around the world. The PRC has diplomatic relations with 175 countries and maintains embassies in 162. Its legitimacy is disputed by the Republic of China and a few other countries. It is thus the largest and most populous state with limited recognition. In 1971, the PRC replaced the Republic of China as the sole representative of China in the United Nations and as one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. China was also a former member and leader of the non-aligned movement, and still considers itself an advocate for developing countries. Along with Brazil, Russia, India and South Africa, China is a member of the BRICS group of emerging major economies and hosted the group's 3rd official summit at Sanya, Hainan in April 2011. Under its interpretation of the One China policy, Beijing has made it a precondition to establishing diplomatic relations that the other country acknowledges its claim to Taiwan and severs official ties with the government of the Republic of China. Chinese officials have protested on numerous occasions when foreign countries have made diplomatic overtures to Taiwan, especially in the matter of armament sales. Diplomatic relations of China. Much of current Chinese foreign policy is reportedly based on Premier Zhou Enlai's 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, and is also driven by the concept of harmony without uniformity, which encourages diplomatic relations between states despite ideological differences. This policy may have led China to support states that are regarded as dangerous or repressive by Western nations, such as Zimbabwe, North Korea and Iran. China has a close economic and military relationship with Russia, and the 2 states often vote in unison in the UN Security Council. Trade relations. In recent decades, China has played an increasing role in calling for free trade areas and security pacts amongst its Asia-Pacific neighbors. China became a member of the World Trade Organization, WTO, on the 11th of December 2001. In 2004, it proposed an entirely new East Asia Summit, EAS, framework as a forum for regional security issues. The EAS, which includes ASEAN Plus 3, India, Australia and New Zealand, held its inaugural summit in 2005. China is also a founding member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, along with Russia and the Central Asian republics. China has had a long and complex trade relationship with the United States. In 2000, the United States Congress approved Permanent Normal Trade Relations, PNTR, with China, allowing Chinese exports in at the same low tariffs as goods from most other countries. China has a significant trade surplus with the United States, its most important export market. In the early 2010s, US politicians argued that the Chinese yuan was significantly undervalued, giving China an unfair trade advantage. Since the turn of the century, China has followed a policy of engaging with African nations for trade and bilateral cooperation. In 2012, Sino-African trade totaled over $160 billion. China maintains healthy and highly diversified trade links with the European Union. China has furthermore strengthened its ties with major South American economies, becoming the largest trading partner of Brazil and building strategic links with Argentina. On the 21st of May 2014, China and Russia signed a $400 billion gas deal. Starting 2019, Russia plans to provide natural gas to China for the next 30 years. Territorial disputes. Ever since its establishment after the Second Chinese Civil War, the PRC has claimed the territories governed by the Republic of China, ROC, a separate political entity today commonly known as Taiwan, as a part of its territory. It regards the island of Taiwan as its Taiwan province, Kinmen and Matsu as a part of Fujian province and islands the ROC controls in the South China Sea as a part of Hainan province and Guangdong province. These claims are controversial because of the complicated cross-strait relations, with the PRC treating the One China policy as one of its most important diplomatic principles. In addition to Taiwan, China is also involved in other international territorial disputes. Since the 1990s, China has been involved in negotiations to resolve its disputed land borders, including a disputed border with India and an undefined border with Bhutan. China is additionally involved in multilateral disputes over the ownership of several small islands in the East and South China Seas, such as the Senkaku Islands and the Scarborough Shoal. On the 21st of May 2014, Xi Jinping, speaking at a conference in Shanghai, pledged to settle China's territorial disputes peacefully. China stays committed to seeking peaceful settlement of disputes with other countries over territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests, he said. Emerging superpower status. China is regularly hailed as a potential new superpower, with certain commentators citing its rapid economic progress, growing military might, very large population, and increasing international influence as signs that it will play a prominent global role in the 21st century. Others, however, warn that economic bubbles and demographic imbalances could slow or even halt China's growth as the century progresses. Some authors also question the definition of superpower, arguing that China's large economy alone would not qualify it as a superpower, and noting that it lacks the military power and cultural influence of the United States. Sociopolitical issues. Human rights and reform. March in memory of Chinese Nobel Peace Prize laureate Liu Xiaobo, who died of organ failure while in government custody in 2017. The Chinese Democracy Movement, social activists, and some members of the Communist Party of China have all identified the need for social and political reform. While economic and social controls have been significantly relaxed in China since the 1970s, political freedom is still tightly restricted. The Constitution of the People's Republic of China states that the fundamental rights of citizens include freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to a fair trial, freedom of religion, universal suffrage, and property rights. However, in practice, these provisions do not afford significant protection against criminal prosecution by the state. Although some criticisms of government policies and the ruling Communist Party are tolerated, censorship of political speech and information, most notably on the Internet, are routinely used to prevent collective action. In 2005, Reporters Without Borders ranked China 159th out of 167 states in its annual World Press Freedom Index, indicating a very low level of press freedom. In 2014, China ranked 175th out of 180 countries. Rural migrants to China's cities often find themselves treated as second-class citizens by the Hukou household registration system, which controls access to state benefits. Property rights are often poorly protected, and taxation disproportionately affects poorer citizens. However, a number of rural taxes have been reduced or abolished since the early 2000s, and additional social services provided to rural dwellers. A number of foreign governments, foreign press agencies, and NGOs also routinely criticize China's human rights record, alleging widespread civil rights violations such as detention without trial, forced abortions, forced confessions, torture, restrictions of fundamental rights, and excessive use of the death penalty. The government suppresses popular protests and demonstrations that it considers a potential threat to social stability, as was the case with the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989. Falun Gong was first taught publicly in 1992. In 1999, when there were 70 million practitioners, the persecution of Falun Gong began, resulting in mass arrests, extralegal detention, and reports of torture and deaths in custody. The Chinese state is regularly accused of large-scale repression and human rights abuses in Tibet and Xinjiang, including violent police crackdowns and religious suppression. At least 120,000 members of China's Muslim Uyghur minority have been detained in mass detention camps, termed re-education camps, aimed at changing the political thinking of detainees, their identities, and their religious beliefs. In January 2019, the United Nations asked for direct access to the detention camps after a panel said it had received credible reports that 1.1 million Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Hui and other ethnic minorities had been detained in the Xinjiang re-education camps. The state has even sought to control offshore reporting of tensions in Xinjiang, intimidating foreign-based reporters by detaining their family members. The Chinese government has responded to foreign criticism by arguing that the right to subsistence and economic development is a prerequisite to other types of human rights, and that the notion of human rights should take into account a country's present level of economic development. It emphasizes the rise in the Chinese standard of living, literacy rate, and average life expectancy since the 1970s, as well as improvements in workplace safety and efforts to combat natural disasters such as the perennial Yangtze River floods. Furthermore, some Chinese politicians have spoken out in support of democratization, although others remain more conservative. Some major reform efforts have been conducted. For instance, in November 2013, the government announced plans to relax the one-child policy and abolish the much-criticized re-education through labor program, although human rights groups note that reforms to the latter have been largely cosmetic. During the 2000s and early 2010s, the Chinese government was increasingly tolerant of NGOs that offer practical, efficient solutions to social problems, but such third sector activity remained heavily regulated. The Global Slavery Index estimated that in 2016 more than 3.8 million people were living in conditions of modern slavery, or 0.25% of the population, including victims of human trafficking, forced labor, forced marriage, child labor, and state-imposed forced labor. All except the last category are illegal. The state-imposed forced system was formally abolished in 2013, but it is not clear the extent to which its various practices have stopped. The Chinese penal system includes labor prison factories, detention centers, and re-education camps, which fall under the heading Laogai, Reform Through Labor. The Laogai Research Foundation in the United States estimated that there were over 1,000 slave labor prisons and camps, known collectively as the Laogai. Prisoners are not paid at all, and need their families to send money to them. Prisoners who refuse to work are beaten, and some are beaten to death. Many of the prisoners are political or religious dissidents, and some are recognized internationally as prisoners of conscience. A Chinese leader said that they want to see two products coming out of the prisons: the man who has been reformed, and the product made by the man. Harry Wu, himself a former prisoner of the Laogai, filmed undercover footage of the Laogai, and was charged with stealing state secrets. For this, Harry Wu was sentenced to 15 years in prison, but only served 66 days before being deported to the United States. In 2019, a world-first study called for the mass retraction of more than 400 scientific papers on organ transplantation, because of fears the organs were obtained unethically from Chinese prisoners. The study was published in the medical journal BMJ Open. A report published in 2016 found a large discrepancy between official transplant figures from the Chinese government and the number of transplants reported by hospitals. While the government says 10,000 transplants occur each year, hospital data shows between 60,000 to 100,000 organs are transplanted each year. The report provided evidence that this gap is being made up by executed prisoners of conscience. Military, with 2.3 million active troops, the People's Liberation Army, PLA, is the largest standing military force in the world, commanded by the Central Military Commission, CMC. China has the second biggest military reserve force, only behind North Korea. The PLA consists of the ground force, PLAGF, the Navy, PLAN, the Air Force, PLAF, and the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, PLAF. According to the Chinese government, China's military budget for 2017 totaled US $151.5 billion, constituting the world's second largest military budget. Although the military expenditures ratio with 1.3% of GDP is below world average. However, Many authorities, including SIPRI and the U.S. Office of the Secretary of Defense, argue that China does not report its real level of military spending, which is allegedly much higher than the official budget. Surface force. As a recognized nuclear weapons state, China is considered both a major regional military power and a potential military superpower. According to a 2013 report by the U.S. Department of Defense, China fields between 50 and 75 nuclear ICBMs, along with a number of SHBMs. However, compared with the other 4 UN Security Council permanent members, China has relatively limited power projection capabilities. To offset this, it has developed numerous power projection assets since the early 2000s. Its first aircraft carrier entered service in 2012, and it maintains a substantial fleet of submarines, including several nuclear-powered attack and ballistic missile submarines. China has furthermore established a network of foreign military relationships along critical sea lanes. China has made significant progress in modernizing its air force in recent decades, purchasing Russian fighter jets such as the Sukhoi Su-30, and also manufacturing its own modern fighters, most notably the Chengdu J-10, J-20 and the Shenyang J-11, J-15, J-16, and J-31. China is furthermore engaged in developing an indigenous stealth aircraft and numerous combat drones. Air and sea denial weaponry advances have increased the regional threat from the perspective of Japan as well as Washington. China has also updated its ground forces, replacing its aging Soviet-derived tank inventory with numerous variants of the modern Type 99 tank, and upgrading its battlefield C-3I and C-4I systems to enhance its network-centric warfare capabilities. In addition, China has developed or acquired numerous advanced missile systems, including anti-satellite missiles, cruise missiles and submarine-launched nuclear ICBMs. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's data, China became the world's third-largest exporter of major arms in 2010-14, an increase of 143% from the period 2005-09. Chinese officials stated that spending on the military will rise to US $173 billion in 2018. Fox. In August 2018, China tested its first hypersonic flight. The China Academy of Aerospace Aerodynamics, CAAA, claims to have successfully conducted the test with the aircraft Starry Sky that touched a speed of Mach 6, which is 6 times the speed of sound. Economy. China and other major developing economies by GDP per capita purchasing power parity, 1990 to 2013. The rapid economic growth of China, blue, is readily apparent. China had the largest economy in the world for most of the past 2,000 years, during which it has seen cycles of prosperity and decline. Since economic reforms began in 1978, China has developed into a highly diversified economy and one of the most consequential players in international trade. Major sectors of competitive strength include manufacturing, retail, mining, steel, textiles, automobiles, energy generation, green energy, banking, electronics, telecommunications, real estate, e-commerce, and tourism. In 2018, China had 9 out of the top 20 most valuable internet companies in the world. In 2019, the Chinese retail market is expected to overtake that of the US and become #1 in the world. China leads the world in e-commerce, accounting for 40% of the global market share. China is the leader in electric vehicles, manufacturing and buying half of all the plug-in electric cars, BEV and PHEV, in the world in 2018. China had 174 gigawatts of installed solar capacity by the end of 2018, which amounts to more than 40% of the global capacity. As of 2018, China had the world's second-largest economy in terms of nominal GDP, totaling approximately $13.5 trillion US, 90 trillion yuan. In terms of purchasing power parity, PPP, GDP, China's economy has been the largest in the world since 2014, according to the World Bank. As of 2018, China was second in the world in total number of billionaires and millionaires. There were 338 Chinese billionaires and 3.5 million millionaires. However, it ranks behind over 70 countries, out of around 180, in per capita economic output, making it a middle-income country. Additionally, its development is highly uneven. Its major cities and coastal areas are far more prosperous compared to rural and interior regions. China brought more people out of extreme poverty than any other country in history. Between 1978 and 2018, China reduced extreme poverty by 800 million, and reduced the extreme poverty rate per international standard. It refers to an income of less than $1.90/day from 88% in 1981 to 1.85% by 2013. According to the World Bank, the number of Chinese in extreme poverty fell from 756 million to 25 million between 1990 and 2013. China's own national poverty standards are higher, and thus the national poverty rates were 3.1% in 2017 and 1% in 2018. Economic history and growth. From its founding in 1949 until late 1978, the People's Republic of China was a Soviet-style centrally planned economy. Following Mao's death in 1976 and the consequent end of the Cultural Revolution, Deng Xiaoping and the new Chinese leadership began to reform the economy and move towards a more market-oriented mixed economy under one-party rule. Agricultural collectivization was dismantled and farmlands privatized, while foreign trade became a major new focus, leading to the creation of special economic zones, says. Inefficient state-owned enterprises, SOEs, were restricted and unprofitable ones were closed outright, resulting in massive job losses. Modern-day China is mainly characterized as having a market economy based on private property ownership, and is one of the leading examples of state capitalism. The state still dominates in strategic pillar sectors such as energy production and heavy industries, but private enterprise has expanded enormously, with around 30 million private businesses recorded in 2008. In 2018, private enterprises in China accounted for 60% of GDP, 80% of urban employment and 90% of new jobs. In 2015, China's middle class became the largest in the world. Since economic liberalization began in 1978, China has been among the world's fastest-growing economies, relying largely on investment and export-led growth. According to the IMF, China's annual average GDP growth between 2001 and 2010 was 10.5%. In the years immediately following the financial crisis of 2007, China's economic growth rate was equivalent to all of the G7 countries' growth combined. According to the Global Growth Generators Index announced by Citigroup in February 2011, China has a very high 3G growth rating. Its high productivity, low labor costs and relatively good infrastructure have made it a global leader in manufacturing. China ranks #1 in the production of steel, aluminum and automobiles. China's global market shares are 50% in steel, 50% in aluminum and 30% in automobile manufacturing. China has also been increasingly turning to automation, becoming the world's largest market for industrial robots in 2013. Between 2010 and 2015, China installed 90,000 industrial robots, or 1/3 of the world's total. In 2017, China bought 36% of all the new industrial robots in the world. China's plan is to also domestically design and manufacture 100,000 industrial robots by 2020. However, the Chinese economy is highly energy-intensive and inefficient. China became the world's largest energy consumer in 2010, relies on coal to supply over 70% of its energy needs, and surpassed the US to become the world's largest oil importer in 2013. In the last decade, China has become #1 in the world in terms of installed solar power capacity, hydropower and wind power. According to the World Economic Forum, China will account for 40% of the global renewable energy by 2022. In addition, official GDP figures are seen as unreliable, and there have been several well-publicized cases of data manipulation. In the early 2010s, China's economic growth rate began to slow amid domestic credit troubles, weakening international demand for Chinese exports and fragility in the global economy. China's GDP was smaller than Germany's in 2007. However, by 2017, China's $12.2 trillion economy became larger than those of Germany, UK, France and Italy combined. In 2018, The IMF reiterated its forecast that China will overtake the US in terms of nominal GDP by the year 2030. Economists also expect China's middle class to expand to 600 million people by 2025. Sightseeing boats ply the river in Shanghai. China has a wide range of natural and historical sites that generate tourist revenue. China is the world's largest e-commerce market, amounting to 42% of the global market by 2016. China's e-commerce market had online sales of more than $1 trillion in 2018, according to PwC. China's e-commerce industry took off in 2009, marked by the growth of internet giants Tencent, Alibaba, purveyors of products such as WeChat and more that have become ubiquitous in contemporary Chinese life. Tencent's WeChat Pay and Alibaba's Alipay have helped China become a world leader in mobile payments, which amounted to about $30 trillion in China in 2017. China is also second only to the United States in venture capital activity and is home to a large number of unicorn startup companies. In 2018, China attracted $105 billion of venture capital investments, amounting to 38% of global VC investments that year. In late 2018, the world's most valuable startup was ByteDance, a Chinese company, and the two most valuable AI, artificial intelligence, startups in the world were SenseTime and Face++, both from China. In 2018, China created 97 unicorns, startups that are worth more than $1 billion, which amounted to one unicorn every 3.8 days. Chinese smartphone brands Huawei, Xiaomi, Oppo, Vivo, OnePlus, etc. have captured more than 40% of the global market. In 2018, Huawei became the largest telecom infrastructure provider and also took the #2 spot from Apple as a smartphone vendor. Tourism is a major contributor to the economy. In 2017, this sector contributed about CNY 8.77 trillion, as $1.35 trillion, 11.04% of the GDP, and contributed direct and indirect employment of up to 28.25 million people. There were 139.48 million inbound trips and 5 billion domestic trips. China is now #1 in the number of skyscrapers, buildings taller than 200 m, accounting for about 50% of world's total. In 4 years, (2015 through 2018), China built 310 skyscrapers, while the corresponding number for the US was 33. China in the global economy, share of world GDP. Year share 1982.32%, 1994.11%, 2007.40%, 2010 13.89%, 2018 18.72%. China is a member of the WTO and is the world's largest trading power, with a total international trade value of $3.87 trillion in 2012. Its foreign exchange reserves reached $2.85 trillion by the end of 2010, an increase of 18.7% over the previous year, making its reserves by far the world's largest. In 2012, China was the world's largest recipient of inward foreign direct investment, FDI, attracting $253 billion. In 2014, China's foreign exchange remittances were $64 billion, making it the second largest recipient of remittances in the world. China also invests abroad, with a total outward FDI of $62.4 billion in 2012, and a number of major takeovers of foreign firms by Chinese companies. China is a major owner of U.S. public debt, holding trillions of dollars worth of U.S. Treasury bonds. China's undervalued exchange rate has caused friction with other major economies, and it has also been widely criticized for manufacturing large quantities of counterfeit goods. China ranks 28th out of 140 countries in the Global Competitiveness Index, above many advanced economies and making it by far the most competitive major emerging economy. This is largely owing to its strength in infrastructure and wide adoption of communication and information technology. However, it lags behind advanced economies in labor market efficiency, institutional strength, and openness of market competition, especially for foreign players attempting to enter the domestic market. In 2018, Fortune's Global 500 list of the world's largest corporations included 120 Chinese companies. Many of the largest public companies in the world were Chinese, including the world's largest bank by total assets, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China. Following the 2007-08 financial crisis, Chinese authorities sought to actively wean off of its dependence on the US dollar as a result of perceived weaknesses of the international monetary system. To achieve those ends, China took a series of actions to further the internationalization of the renminbi. In 2008, China established dim sum bond market and expanded the cross-border trade RMB settlement pilot project, which helps establish pools of offshore RMB liquidity. This was followed with bilateral agreements to settle trades directly in renminbi with Russia, Japan, Australia, Singapore, the United Kingdom, and Canada. As a result of the rapid internationalization of the renminbi, it became the 8th most traded currency in the world, an emerging international reserve currency, and a component of the IMF's special drawing rights. However, partly due to capital controls that make the renminbi fall short of being a fully convertible currency, it remains far behind the euro, dollar and Japanese yen in international trade volumes. Class and income inequality. China's middle-class population, if defined as those with annual income of between $10,000 and $60,000, had reached more than 300 million by 2012. Wages in China have grown exponentially in the last 40 years. Real wages grew sevenfold from 1978 to 2007. By 2018, median wages in Chinese cities such as Shanghai were about the same as or higher than the wages in Eastern European countries. More than 75% of China's urban consumers are expected to earn between 60,000 and 229,000 RMB per year by 2022. China has the world's second highest number of billionaires, with nearly 400 as of 2018, increasing at the rate of roughly 2 per week. China's domestic retail market was worth over 20 trillion yuan, as $3.2 trillion, in 2012 and is growing at over 12% annually as of 2013, while the country's luxury goods market has expanded immensely, with 27.5% of the global share. However, in recent years, China's rapid economic growth has contributed to severe consumer inflation, leading to increased government regulation. China has a high level of economic inequality, which has increased in the past few decades. In 2012, China's official Gini coefficient was 0.474. A study conducted by Southwestern University of Finance and Economics showed that China's Gini coefficient actually had reached 0.61 in 2012, and top 1% Chinese held more than 25% of China's wealth. In comparison, the top 1% of Americans held 40% of the wealth. Science and technology. Historical. China was once a world leader in science and technology up until the Ming Dynasty. Ancient Chinese discoveries and inventions, such as map-making, printing, the compass, and gunpowder, the 4 great inventions, became widespread across East Asia, the Middle East and later to Europe. Chinese mathematicians were the first to use negative numbers. By the 17th century, Europe and the Western world surpassed China in scientific and technological advancement. The causes of this early modern great divergence continue to be debated by scholars to this day. After repeated military defeats by the European colonial powers in Japan in the 19th century, Chinese reformers began promoting modern science and technology as part of the self-strengthening movement. After the communists came to power in 1949, efforts were made to organize science and technology based on the model of the Soviet Union, in which scientific research was part of central planning. After Mao's death in 1976, science and technology was established as one of the 4 modernizations, and a Soviet-inspired academic system was gradually reformed. Modern era. Since the end of the Cultural Revolution, China has made significant investments in scientific research and is quickly catching up with the US in R&D spending. In 2017, China spent $279 billion on scientific research and development. According to OECD, China spent 2.11% of its GDP on research and development, R&D, in 2016. Science and technology are seen as vital for achieving China's economic and political goals. and are held as a source of national pride to a degree sometimes described as techno-nationalism. Nonetheless, China's investment in basic and applied scientific research remains behind that of leading technological powers such as the United States and Japan. According to the U.S. National Science Board, China had, for the first time, more science and engineering publications than the U.S. in 2016. Also, in 2016, China spent $409 billion by PPP on research and development. In 2018, China is estimated to have spent $475 billion by PPP, second only to the USA. In 2017, China was #2 in international patents application, behind the US but ahead of Japan. Chinese tech companies Huawei and ZTE were the top 2 filers of international patents in 2017. Chinese-born scientists have won the Nobel Prize in Physics 4 times, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry and Physiology or Medicine once respectively, though most of these scientists conducted their Nobel-winning research in Western nations. China is developing its education system with an emphasis on science, mathematics and engineering. In 2009, China graduated over 10,000 PhD engineers, and as many as 500,000 graduates, more than any other country. In 2016, there were 4.7 million STEM, science, technology, engineering and mathematics, graduates in China, which was more than 8 times the corresponding number for the US. China also became the world's largest publisher of scientific papers by 2016. Chinese technology companies such as Huawei and Lenovo have become world leaders in telecommunications and personal computing, and Chinese supercomputers are consistently ranked among the world's most powerful. China is also expanding its use of industrial robots. From 2008 to 2011, the installation of multi-role robots in Chinese factories rose by 136%. The Chinese space program is one of the world's most active, and is a major source of national pride. In 2018, China successfully launched more satellites, 35, than any other country, including the USA, 30. In 1970, China launched its first satellite, Dongfang Hong'ai, becoming the 5th country to do so independently. In 2003, China became the 3rd country to independently send humans into space, with Yang Lui's space flight aboard Shenzhou 5. As of 2015, 10 Chinese nationals have journeyed into space, including 2 women. In 2011, China's first space station module, Tiangong-1, was launched, marking the first step in a project to assemble a large manned station by the early 2020s. In 2013, China successfully landed the Chang'e 3 lander and Yu-2 rover onto the lunar surface. China plans to collect lunar soil samples by 2017. In 2016, China's second space station module, Tiangong-2, was launched from Jiuquan aboard a long March 2 degrees Fahrenheit rocket on the 15th of September 2016. Then Shenzhou 11 successfully docked with Tiangong-2 on the 19th of October 2016. In 2019, China became the first country to land a probe, Chang'e 4, on the far side of the Moon. Infrastructure. A 2016 report by McKinsey Consulting Group revealed that China has been annually spending more on infrastructure than North America and Western Europe combined. Telecommunications. China is the largest telecom market in the world and currently has the largest number of active cell phones of any country in the world, with over 1.5 billion subscribers. As of 2018, it also has the world's largest number of internet and broadband users, with over 800 million internet users as of 2018, equivalent to around 60% of its population, and almost all of them being mobile as well. Almost entire China's population had access to 4G network by 2017. By 2018, China had more than 1 billion 4G users, accounting for 40% of world's total. In terms of unique mobile subscribers as percentage of population, China came in at 82%, placing the country #3 in the world. As of 2018. As of early 2019, the average mobile connection speed in China was 30 megabits per second, which is 9% slower than the US. As for fixed broadband in China, the average download speed was 76 megabits per second, and 60% of fixed broadband Chinese users, or 200 million Chinese households, were able to access the internet at 100 megabits per second or higher. As of 2018, China is making rapid progress in WANG's 1000 megabits per second internet, and 42% of Chinese homes are expected to have WANG's broadband link by 2023. In 2018, China had 378 million fixed broadband